That was a
Oh,
great pick of me at the end there, isn't it?
hello, hello.
Hello and welcome, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are. It's good evening for me.
Exactly, wherever you are on this realm. Hello, good day, good evening, good night. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Cam,
Today we are going to get into... Oh, sorry. What was that? Do you want me to play now or should we leave that for a bit later?
Yeah, sure. We got a new little intro to test out that Cam just put together. And then after that, Michelle has another wonderful presentation to present to all of us on water towers and their correlation to uncovering the truth of this ancient covered up civilization and technology.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Alrighty, let's whack this little intro on and then we'll get into it.
There we go.
Can you see that? Now I can't see the play button. That's no good. There.
There you go.
This is the bit, isn't it? That confuses me. It's like, we choose to come here to get this sorted out, or is this just... It just seems a little unfair, doesn't it? That you know, we seem to be here and there's this parasite messing up our experience.
And, you know, I know in my own life, the times that I've made major changes, it was like it became more painful not to change than to change. That was when I made big changes.
You know, it's this whole ridiculous narrative of, it's, you know, it's an unsafe world. There's not enough for you. It's scary. Everyone's out to get you, and
Technical difficulties. Not hearing sound on that, Cam.
Thank you, Anne.
Ooh, that video clip is awesome. Real working Antiquitech. Cam, there's no sound on the video though right now. We can't hear you or the video.
It means something.
What, can't you hear the video?
Than it would have even a few years ago. And it's our free will.
Now we can.
I
think you're muted.
Oh, well, hang on. That's no good. Let me rewind it.
Mulligan, take two.
The opposite to that, all about empowerment, like literally.
Cosmic resonance, I think they called that one. Or
cosmic resonance, that's a better name.
Real science, you can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding, put that into the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. Like it's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
The movies are the truth, and the news is the lies. It completely flipped it.
You know, when you look at everything with new eyes, and you come across information like she was born into a very wealthy family with elite connections. You know, it means something very different now to me than it would have even a few years ago. And it's our free will that they've really also messed with, because we've been lied to and we react based on lies. Just getting their independence and end up in civil wars for 20, 30 years happens a lot.
Because we keep choosing to pick up the gun and use it on ourselves instead of building and uniting and accepting that we are one people, one spirit, one harmony on one plane that together, united, can achieve anything we dream of.
So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because change is too difficult?
And then give them pieces of information that they will then pursue themselves and look into, and then they'll wake themselves up.
I was going to mention it's the whole red pill, blue pill of the Matrix. I mean, that of the movie. And you can consider that movie as a documentary because they're telling us something about what's happening here. So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because change is too difficult? Wake up.
All righty, there we go.
Great job, Cambell.
Oh, can you hear
Always
me?
amazing.
Thank you. Not that I made the content, of course, but yeah, some wise words.
So, and everything is a work in progress for all of us in this journey we're on.
Exactly. The grand work. The grand work.
At least we're out there doing it. We're trying to.
Exactly. As long as we're moving forward, then we're doing something right.
And getting up in the morning.
Even as slow as it may be. Moving forward in 15 million directions at once. But
Cambell, I do commend you because I am not a morning person at all. And in fact, if it wasn't for my nocturnalness, we probably wouldn't get nearly half the streams done that we do.
And I'm glad you compromised with 8
yeah,
p.m.
gosh, my
for me.
sleeping
It's like
pattern's just gone.
that hour makes a difference to where I don't feel quite so deadhead.
Yeah, well, I can
So
go earlier too. Like, I can go earlier than this next time if it's easier.
I'm like you, Cambell. I'm a morning person. I get all my creative stuff
I'm
done
up,
in the morning.
like, I'm the same. By the afternoon, I'm just like, it's all gone. But as soon as like
Right.
the sun hits my face or light, I'm literally standing up before I've opened my eyes, and I'm like, oh, it's daytime. Like I don't know how people roll over. How people wake up and then they roll over and go, oh, I just need to sleep. I just cannot. I can't do that. I just can't do it. It's weird.
Hey,
Strange
Buffy.
people.
I just have to share a happy synchronicity before I get into my presentation. This evening, I was driving home around 4:40, stopped at the traffic light, and I don't have air conditioning in my car, so I have to keep my windows rolled down. And the guy sitting next to me in his car had his window partially down, and he looked right at me and he said, "Your tire's almost flat." And I didn't know that, so I thanked him. And I was half a mile from the tire store in the same direction as home. And I managed to pull in there and get my tire filled up before they closed at 5. And the air hasn't leaked out yet, so I think it was just low. But it was like perfect, because had the guy not said anything, I probably would not have known, and ended up with a flat tire.
It would have been a mile past it with a flat tire. Yeah.
It just saves time and trouble.
In the right place at the right time. That's the thing. Like, if we stop judging, what comes our way, and we sort of let it flow, it always works out for the best. It's only when you start judging things and saying this should have happened and it should have happened at this time on this date, that's when things go badly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The universe unfolds exactly as it should, or it's meant to, right? As the saying goes.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So do you want me to jump into it?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep. Let's get into it.
All right.
Hello, everyone in chat. Thanks for joining us. And today is water towers.
It's water towers. I was going to do more, but with everything else going on last week, I didn't have a chance to put it together, and this is really plenty of material, but I was going to do water towers and bell towers, but this will cover a lot of ground as it is. And I'm going to go ahead and start with my PowerPoint and just say that this starting point for me, which is the Sulphur Springs Water Tower in Tampa, Florida, is pretty interesting because I became aware of it the summer that I started waking up to this ancient civilization. So I found the North American star tetrahedron that I talk about, which is the Star of David that you find when you connect major cities in North America, that I found about January 2016. And in June or July of 2016, I had flown to Tampa. I have a lot of family in Tampa, Florida, in that area, Central Florida. And my mom was going to a family reunion, so I was there to take her. And, bearing in mind, I had just started waking up to this, and I'm passing on the interstate, and I see this tall structure that looks like a lighthouse. And Tampa's next to the water, but this particular structure is not that close to the lighthouse. It's pretty far inland. And so that kind of stuck in my mind. And last year, so in 2020, I took my mom to live in an assisted living facility in the place where she was born and grew up. And on my last day there, I spent the day exploring this water tower and the Sulphur Springs neighborhood of Tampa before I left the next day. So I spent a fair amount of time here just, looking around and finding relationships between a lot of the structures there. But there's really a lot of interesting things that stand out about this. The first of that being that it's a water tower, or that's what we're told that it is. This structure is huge. I mean, the pictures don't do it justice. The picture on the right is a photograph that I took myself. That thing is massive. And it's neglected. I was the only one there. You have the beautiful old oaks there, but the parking lot was in bad shape. I was the only car in the parking lot. And if you look at the postcard on the left, it says Sulphur Springs Water Tower, 210 feet high, elevator shaft. Elevator shaft in a water tower? To the top for automatic electric elevator. So what's up with that? First thing that jumps to mind.
And how can that be a water tower? It's full of holes.
It's like, again, that I think the resemblance to the lighthouse is significant. And I don't have all those connections in my mind, and just kind of putting it out there for other minds that might be able to work on this. I know there's a connection between the lighthouses and the star forts and this free energy system that the original civilization had built. I know there's a connection. I just don't know how it all works together. And when this particular water tower was operational, it was said to have stored 136,000 gallons of water pumped from an artesian well, with the water tank occupying the upper quarter of the tower. So that's partial answer to your question, that it's not the whole tower. It still doesn't explain the elevator, though, or what's going on here. And that the seven floors occupy the lower three quarters. Okay, so, and obviously this cool little building's not there anymore.
Yeah, but was that a pump station or something? Or it was an elevator then, actually, wasn't it? Not a water tower. So
yeah, so there's something going on with this that's not fully explained. And what we're told in the historical records, we've got this article from 1927 that confirms that yes, there's a full automatic elevator with a 6-foot shaft. And we have the name of a cement contractor, Grover Poole, who was said to have constructed it. And it was supposed to have been done for developer and realtor Josiah Richardson. Again, this is what we're told in the historical record, to ensure an adequate water pressure. And it was built to supply the building which housed the Sulphur Springs Hotel and Apartments, which was on the 2nd floor of this building. Mewe's Arcade on the 1st floor was said to have been the first shopping mall in Florida. Okay, so they built the water tower, we're told, in 1927 to provide water pressure, to make sure there was enough water pressure for this building. Okay, this is what you're going to find if you go look for the history.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
So
Okay.
I'm trying to work that out in my head. It's hurting. So that means that tank, what they're saying is that tank at the top has a shaft going straight through the middle of that thing where, you know, the elevator is supposed to be, because it has to be connected to the water system under the ground, or it can't regulate anything because it's not part of anything. I have heard that theory before, though, that they were used as like a valve, like a regulating valve for pressure to let air out of the system and things like that. But why would you pump water all that way up just so you didn't have to pump it down again? If you know what I mean? They pump it up to sit there so that it's free when they let it down. But
it would require electrical
make
pump
sense.
to get it up there, right? It's not like a gravitational aquifer in the plumbing of that sort of water tower. It would need, for it to have any purpose like that, it would have to have massive storage on top, not just going up and dropping down to the same amount. Like it, yeah, it's absolutely ludicrous, and it definitely looks more like a lighthouse or a prison tower or something along those lines than any sort of water tower for
airport tower, like
a city that hasn't even been built yet. Like,
you know, and what the purpose of this building
and
was
the size
is
of it, and
anybody's
they
guess.
say it was built for 2 buildings. Like they built that just to get water to a couple of buildings. It's come on.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean,
more rock in that than the buildings it's supplying with water.
I mean, I could not, in any of the photos I took of this, I could not give the same size that it actually is. Again, it's massive at the base, and then when you look up. Now, it's supposed to have, at the foundation, it's 45 feet or 14 meters deep. So it's, and that there was the water was pumped from an artesian well. 136,000 gallons of water pumped from an artesian well is what we're told about it. And then, okay, now does this picture look familiar? You know, you kind of saw it in your intro there with the flood. Tampa Morning Tribune, Friday, September 8th, 1933. He lost, the guy that owned this building and that commissioned the water tower lost all of his properties in Sulphur Springs in 1933 when the Tampa Electric Company dam, there was a dam that collapsed and flooding ripped through downtown Tampa. The Tampa Electric Company dam collapsed. So
it collapsed.
Yes. So again, there's questions in here because there sure are a lot of floods going on during this period in history. There's a lot of fires going on, and that have been going on in the 1800s, 1900s. I mean, it's like a never-ending problem, floods and fires.
It is. And it's this same narrative of they can build that water tower and it's still standing there almost perfect, you know, 100 years later. But they can't build a dam. Like, you know, it's just like the buildings, isn't it? When you see the wooden shacks next to the the big, you know, ornate buildings, and they're like, yeah, they were built in the same year. And it's like, yeah, okay, all right, yeah. It just doesn't make sense at all. So the dams do we could that be part of like the flood? Do you think it was a worldwide flood, or do you think it was individual?
No,
floods?
I think there was. I think it could have been a combination. The one that wiped everything out to begin with, so that would be like the mud flood concept, which I place a lot of belief that something like that happened. I mean, there's just too much evidence from everywhere that places were literally encased in mud and dug out. And, you know, thankfully people post all their pictures on the internet, and the internet's forever. And you dig through these historical pictures, and there's all kinds of real gems of information that actually document the whole idea of a mud flood. Now, and whether it was like one flood or a series of floods, it you know, I'm open to either. I think it happened within a definite period of time. But, you know, very open to that idea that there was more than one. And I think these kinds of floods that were specific to cities were intentionally created to, you know, wipe out whatever so they could bring in the new stuff, you know. And again, it's in city after city after city.
The cleanup crew.
Right.
Yeah, it gives them a good excuse to bring in all the, you know, emergency responders, doesn't it? Which, what are we seeing now, right? I mean, I was watching some of the Iwa and Non videos yesterday, and he talks about, you know, that basically, you know, I think, you know, sort of Philip drews in and talks about it too, like basically the whole world being a mine, you know, basically an open cut mine, and to the point where he says, you know, a lot of the valleys and things that we have and gorges, they're all just mines, and a lot of the lakes we have are flooded mines. And he talks about a lot that things just got flooded out. And it's interesting that we find all these lighthouses out in the middle of the ocean, you know, and there's always this question of how the hell did they build that in the ocean? How do you get a foundation down there? You know, were they once on land, you know, and the water's literally risen, you know, whatever, and so it was a completely different world at some point. I think he even talks that at some point he says that there were no oceans. It was just pretty much flat, and people just started digging holes and piling up the you know, the materials, and they became the hills, and the holes became the lakes, and who knows?
And I have a bit of a different perspective on that, but, you know, the earth has definitely been mined for sure in the last couple hundred years. I mean, there's big, huge mines like in the far north and different places that are kind of remote that, you know, they're just hauling away all kinds of resources and minerals and things like that.
Yeah, and all like what looks like the tailing ponds that are like the fake volcanoes and stuff like that, or even especially the Grand Canyon and all of the square like edges and temples and stuff that were put in there. It seems like it could have been a mine that they then dug out and then built the temple complex out of from mining and stuff like that.
Yeah. You know, and I guess where I really differ is I do think that there was a really positive, benevolent civilization for a very long time.
I
And
agree fully with
and
that.
and that they
I agree.
I'm sure they mined, but I think they mined responsibly. You know, the same idea as you know, when Native Americans take a life, they pray for it, and they thank the life for the food. You know, I'm talking about like killing an animal for a meal. You know, there's a respect, that's a respect to change, but they're not just killing indiscriminately. I know at Pinnacle Mountain in Arkansas, which is a pyramid, there's a quarry right next to Pinnacle Mountain that I think was used in ancient times. And I think probably a lot of quarries are like that. They come from ancient times, but I think there's a big difference between the old world and the new world in terms of resource extraction. And I think the old world extracted resources to enhance the civilization. I think the new world order, so to speak, extracts it for profit and doesn't care about the effects on the environment or the people.
The damage.
They just, they just take it all,
Exactly.
and when it's gone, they leave and they go somewhere else. So to me, yes, the mining is a big
I was
issue.
just thinking that. I mean, how much crap do we have that we don't need? That literally ends up in the bin within a few months. And but behind that, to get that in your hand, is all this mining, all this destruction, and it's really for stuff that we don't even need. Like you said, it's just so they can control us with money and power. It's just madness.
So that's where I would differ. I don't think. I think the problem with random mining has been more in the last couple of 100 years. But I do understand and agree that in terms of what actually caused the cataclysm, it could have been, frequency weapons, direct energy weapons, nuclear weapons. It could have been applied at different, because like an earthquake, if it's a high enough magnitude, will cause the ground to liquefy, which is the same idea as a mud flood. So, whatever they did to cause the Earth's crust to liquefy, there's clear evidence and clear photographic evidence from all over the world that that something happened. And, I think those that are researching this find common ground with that. Okay, we know something happened. When did it happen? Who was here? How did this happen? And that's where we start to diverge. But we're all looking for, we're all trying to put this puzzle together, but it's complicated because there's so many different layers to it. And
well, I mean,
I was just going to say, and the lies that we've been told.
There's definitely. Oh, you go.
The lies we've been told, so we wouldn't know what the heck was going on, are just too, countless. So that's
exactly.
part of it too.
In the base, like there's two sort of major viewpoints, isn't there? One is there was this amazing, civilization that was all, for the empowerment and betterment of man, and the other is it's a prison planet. They're pretty much polar opposites, aren't they? And
it became
I think that the prison planet could definitely be. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, I don't think it started off as one, but there is definitely a big narrative of this is a prison planet. We've been sent here. It's we're locked up kind of thing. But I see it more as it's almost like you talk about in the time with the time loop. The what is it? 1942, 1492. It's like they've come, like it's like there's just been a program put over the top, and I've said it before. For all we know, all this antiquity could still be working. We just can't see it. We've just had a program which is basically a perspective, and that tells us what we believe is true. And if it's not true, then we can't see it. So I agree. I think it was all good, but what's happened is they've just been messing with our thoughts, our frequencies, our interpretation of what's going on. And of course, they wipe out all the history and replace it with their crap. And here we are.
Right. And I think
we're almost out of it, I think.
I agree. That's what I'm playing for. But I think this only goes back 200 to 300 years. I think prior to, the prior old world was very positive. I don't think we would see the level of integration of infrastructure that we see all over the earth. And I'm going to give some examples of that in this presentation. We would not see that level of integration if it was not a harmonious, balanced, integrated civilization. And then the controllers came in and reversed everything for their benefit and wiped our memories of the true history, and they want to control us. They want to control the resources. They want everything. And up until recently, they had control of the narrative, but they don't have that anymore. They lost that with the internet. Even though they developed the internet for control, they lost control of the narrative. And, once people start waking up, there's no turning back. And it's just a matter of,
No.
people being ready and, keep getting it out there. And so I'm going to give some other examples.
Just keep
Hang on just a sec. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, they tell us in, let's see. What did I say? So just 6 years after they got this tower working to provide water pressure for this complex here, it was already flooded out. It didn't take long. And, again, this is just to try to give an idea of the size of this thing. I mean, I guess I needed another person there to stand in front of it to give you a real idea of it.
Is that a door?
It looks like it was at one time. I'm sure they don't want anybody going in there.
Okay, so that's
totally was a door. Totally.
Probably a large.
Yeah.
It was facade, of course, right? And
you've got the fancy, stylization going on here. The only thing that's wrong with this building is it's neglect. I mean, obviously, structurally, it's still in good shape.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to mention one more thing about this. So from its construction in 1927 until 1971, the water tower provided artesian well water to both businesses and residences in the immediate vicinity, at which time the city of Tampa was said to have forced the end of its water piping operations. So it was still working, we're told, but then they stopped it. The city forced it to stop. And so again, if you look into it, it said it was built on top of an artesian well. So there's like an endless supply of water that's under natural pressure without pumping. And what happens when you get the city utilities involved? You go from probably not paying a whole bunch to starting to have to pay for it. So you get your city water utilities bill every month.
And
so
it's harder for them to, dump chemicals into water towers, isn't it? All that fluoride and stuff.
Especially out of aquifers.
Out of what, Bernie?
The underground artesian aquifers and wells.
Mm-hmm. Again, I think there was a whole lot more to these underground aquifers and everything that we can't even imagine, because this civilization was pretty advanced.
Absolutely.
This is the thing. I mean, am I sort of looking at this as a single thing? But when you look at it, star forts, canals, got the massive dike systems, which we're told are just in Holland, but of course they're not. They're everywhere. Windmills, it's just everything is, the big water wheels as well, which there's still a few, like the machine of Marley, all that kind of stuff. There was clearly a water-based, like they was clearly looking at water as their energy, as their current. We've got, it's just the whole, it's all clearly one system. We just don't know how it all integrated and know how it all worked.
Absolutely. And it's that, like, even today, we don't see water as energy yet. It's like probably 20 or 30% of the overall world's energy grid is generated through hydroelectric dams and water today, right? And they claimed there wasn't any electricity, yet we have the atmospheric electricity books and chapters in the old science books. But then there's all these old water wheels and all the windmills everywhere too, right? That both of those probably were for using, generating some sort of power. But please do continue, Michelle.
No, totally agree, Bernie, and that's an excellent point, because I mean, I've seen water wheels in ancient Egypt that look just like water wheels from more modern times. I mean, big, huge ones, and gears. You see gears in these marvelous machines of the Industrial Revolution, and I've seen a a big, huge gear in what was called a sugar mill in Belize that had a gigantic tree growing out of it. I mean, like a huge tree with this huge cog out of this building, and it's like, oh, this is a sugar mill, and it's like, yeah, right. That's another thing. That's
right.
They call these ruins sugar mills, and it's, you know, they removed critical thinking from school curriculums so people wouldn't even know to think about it. I guess.
Well, literally, you're not allowed to think, or you get that big red cross on your paper. You know, it's thinking is bad.
Thinking is bad. You got to memorize and regurgitate in order to do well in school. So the next one is
another thing about mining too is just what we were talking about is the word mine, right? It's mining.
Mm-hmm.
I come here to take everything.
That's really good. So before I move on from Sulphur Springs, I just wanted to point out that it was from my in-depth study of Sulphur Springs that when I did research of Shepherd's Bush in West London based on somebody's suggestion, that I noticed the correlations between Sulphur Springs in Tampa, Florida, and Shepherd's Bush in London. And, you know, starting with both places have a water tower in the vicinity. You got the Thames Water Tower in that general area. I think it's in Hampstead, but it's like right next to Shepherd's Bush. That was when I made the connection between racetracks and airports. And then other people started saying, sending me leads, check this out. And I started finding more and more and more that are like in some kind of configuration like this, an angle of some kind and a short distance away, you know, just a few kilometers or miles from each other. So you've got Shepherd's Bush here, and I've got the thumbtack at a Greyhound racing track, or what used to be the White City Stadium track, which turned into a Greyhound Derby, and Heathrow Airport, and this is Tampa International Airport, and this is Sulphur Springs, where there was also a Greyhound racing track in Sulphur Springs. And because I had spent the day there, I knew about the Greyhound racing track, and then when I saw the White City track and just started seeing all these correlations, you know, to me it's quite statistically significant, not only here but in other places as well, that you have these racing tracks and airports and all kinds of other things in the same configuration. You've got sports stadiums, and you know, they're all kind of clustered in the same part of town in different cities, railroad tracks nearby, and there's something going on with that. And then the other point I want to make is just a similarity between the Hillsborough River in Tampa, which, you know, you see it looks like it's kind of been cut off or drained a little bit here. But you've got the same pattern going here with the Thames in London. You know, it's basically the same idea, right down to this, you know, double humped thing going. And again, this is not just these two places. You can find that configuration all over.
You see them everywhere, the meanders. I'm wondering if that's to do with frequency. Like if you've got water and current coming in, every time it, you know, hits the bank and changes direction, is that somehow changing the frequency of the water or charging it or something?
I think it's like it's
running it through some kind of a circuit.
It's doing something. I've seen so many of these. In my mind, I have no doubt that that's not natural. And they're like canals.
Oh, of course,
they have masonry banks and
there's no way it's natural.
And that's just two examples, but I've got
and we have these
examples.
things called like billabongs in oxbow lakes. I think that's what I was told they were called in other countries, but billabongs, which are basically just the little curve of that river, and they say, well, what happens over time is the river just decides not to go through the curve, and it just makes another thing and goes straight across, makes a straight river, and you get left with this little curved lake, a billabong. We don't see that I got told this when I was, there was a big story, and that they don't exist. These billabongs do not exist. Like sometimes you'll see a lake or something, and they'll go, "Oh, that's a billabong." But as far as them being the cut-off bits of meanders on river, they don't. That's ridiculous.
I do have.
And why would nature not just go straight in the first place? Sorry.
In Calgary, there in 2013, there was a massive flood, and on the Elbow River, I did see the formation of an actual oxbow lake take place, and I have taken geology in university. And that said, that's one part of like the natural formation, but simultaneously, Michelle, with the amount of like engineered, terraformed rivers and systems that you've found, and especially what I've noticed in a couple of the canals that you pointed out in the old world systems, they're actually giant constructed Tesla valves that they've engineered into the river to divert and I guess limit the flow without even having to dam it, essentially. And that is something much more to it. But as for the actual Oxbow Lake, those I have seen firsthand formed, and I'm going to be
so
doing a little drone action down in there anyways.
You're gonna burst one balloon. All right.
I think there's I'm going to say I think you're both right. I mean, exactly. I don't think that all oxbows are created from the process that you saw, Bernie. I think there's much more going on here.
Going to your point, Campbell,
I could see it in a flood kind of situation.
Completely different, especially in Australia, and how there's completely different water systems and environment there, where it doesn't make sense for there to be all of these little oxbows, and
how we don't really have flooding
water runs, or that there isn't any rivers or whatnot there in the first place. And that was definitely something completely different, and that could actually even tie into what was the ancient mining, if there's like these spill piles close to them, or the different canyons and dugouts and massively terraformed areas, right? So I just had to throw that in there for like the skeptics and stuff, right? And I'm glad that you clarified, Michelle. I think there's two different things, and it's like both exist simultaneously, and that just in general, people have to come to the accepting that both realities, both facts, and a lot of things can exist simultaneously within themselves. Like, what the proof or existence or idea of one thing doesn't have to wipe out the possibility or the reality of another. But chances are it's a little bit of both, as always.
And again, I have too many examples of things like this to put in one place. But I mean, even when you look at there's a big bends of the rivers. Big bends. I've seen them all over the world, and Horseshoe Bend in Arizona, and I've seen the same looking thing in China, and I've seen
those ones are possible. I 100% agree with you, especially how they go down so deep into these canyons, where it's like that would take millions or billions of years for it to actually erode that much rock into that same position, and there's just no way that it wouldn't have spilt over in some flood and gone elsewhere and would have just stayed in that one thing. Like, that's the impossibility, and that's where there's probably some sort of like plasma catastrophe or some sort of thing. Something happened,
or to add to the mix, it was engineered.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I think is
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was engineered beforehand, and then like the old advanced society and their buildings, their ruins, and then like some plasma catastrophe or giant event happened, which then made it erode and look like its natural sort of thing over the last 10 or 12,000 years. But that the more you look into, especially areas like that, it looks like it's all block work. It looks like it's old buildings. And especially, for instance, like the Grand Canyon or the Badlands, all these different like pyramid looking sites, those are 100% ancient ruins from a couple of resets ago, at least, is what I would suspect.
okay. So, and this is what I'm talking about. So this is Big Bend in Texas, and this is Horseshoe Bend in Arizona.
Right? How are they identical like that? Like, look, that's a platform with like a building right there at the end of each one, it looks like.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
how does it go into almost a full circle coming out, right? Like that's impossible with how they claim the erosion. Like it couldn't go like this the way all of them are. Like that 100%, Michelle, you're bang on that is a sign of something from a far gone lost age. But definitely intelligently engineered.
Right. And I do see this kind of thing as very ancient architecture, engineering, whatever you want to call it. But I've got more examples than this in different places, and I just don't see that as natural.
No, there's just no way. And especially mathematically speaking of coincidences, and I love how you compile all of the images, Michelle, of just one after another of examples where it's just absolutely mathematically, statistically impossible that we have these identical ruins, geology, but ruins, are ancient eroded architecture from lost ages.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get into more, really suspicious stuff like this one. So this is the Alhambra Water Tower in Coral Gables, Florida, near Miami. It was said to have been built in 1924 and was part of the city of Coral Gables' domestic water supply system until 1931. 1924 built. In 1931, it was disconnected from the system and abandoned after the water company started buying water from the city of Miami. So I'm going with what's in the written record. Does it make any sense to build something massive and solid like this and only use it for 7 years?
Right? Like every single place, like every example you pull up, Michelle, it's the same story. And like, I love also how John Levi gives these same examples, of which I hope you saw his last week's video, because he gave you a nice good shout out there, Michelle. But it's insane. Like, oh, we built this massive structure that in all reality would have taken them the same amount of time, if not longer, than it was operational for just to build. But, when we were in these wars, suffering famines and diseases, we just had all of this extra resources to waste and stop using. Like, it's ridiculous.
And this particular,
what about it's not feasible, right? So the government basically get their own water and go, oh, well, we're going to supply everyone. So this guy goes out of business, and the government don't go along and go, oh, hey, how about we buy that tower off his things that's built on top of a natural well and it's just got free water flowing through it. They just leave it there to rot. That's
now
stupid.
this one was saved from demolition and purchased by the city of Coral Gables for what was described as a token sum. I don't know how much that was, but I guess not very much. And it was said to have been restored in 1993 from old photographs. So are we seeing the example of these two, beautiful, sturdy towers in Florida, of these endless natural sources of water, like you're saying, Cambell, being shut down in favor of metered water and control of this essential life resource? I mean, is that what this is about?
Yeah, well,
besides the fact that this is they had to have an explanation for it because it was part of the original civilization.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
they
still
need
looks
all
like a
their
lighthouse.
machinery and all their chemicals and all that kind of crap.
100%.
It still looks like.
How is it a water tower yet the top where the water should be stored is the skinniest, smallest point of the structure? You know, like it's just ridiculous.
Looks like you've got a dome going there and some kind of antiquitech going on.
Got a dome,
Yep.
fire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
so
some reason a
you
door
did
right here
mention
in the middle of it.
That's the viewing deck. That's the viewing deck, Michelle.
Oh, yeah,
Come
of
on.
course. Every water
Every
tower
good water
has to
tower
have
needs a viewing deck. It's just crazy, isn't it? You mentioned that airships may have, you know, we've all seen the photos, the pictures of the airships on, you know, the Eiffel Tower and the Chrysler Tower, not the Eiffel, the Empire State. And, you know, the top of that looks fairly similar. We've even got a little landing, you know, platform up there. And just say it did have water in it, is there a possibility that they were refueling with hydrogen and these were just refueling stations for airships?
And I want to know about the elevator. And I've got another one of those coming up here in just a moment. This one it didn't say. But I'm just kind of
that would make
stumped
sense
on
for the airships, wouldn't it?
exactly. It doesn't make sense for a water tower, but it does for a docking station. And there's a comparison of how the Alhambra Tower used to look and how it looks today. So they monkeyed with it a little bit there, but you know, same idea. But again, you've got this
they've changed
this beautiful dome going on up here. You know, it looks like it was more than a water tower. And again, it's neglected. I mean,
yeah.
And that's what they do. They have these beautiful buildings that they just leave to rot if they don't tear them down. And occasionally they preserve it.
And I love, though, that they also leave some of these to wear down so that we can compare them to lots of the original first pictures of these buildings where they look even more older and worn down than the ones that are left to be worn down these days.
Exactly. So, yes, thank you for not tearing them all down. Powers that were. So this is the Grand Avenue Water Tower in St. Louis.
That's a water tower. Oh, yeah, I have seen that one. Yeah.
So that's the oldest of the 3 water towers in St. Louis that are still standing today. And this one.
How big is that thing?
This one was said to have been built by architect George Barnett in 1871, and it is the tallest freestanding Corinthian column in the world.
Wow.
And they're doing good work in they're doing good work in 1871, aren't they?
Right.
Okay.
And looking in the background, that's
just stupid.
Isn't that cool? This one back here, you know, and you've got the windows. That looks like the other water towers we were just looking at. Another docking station there.
It does.
And
so has this column actually got like a tank in it?
No tank, just one pipe up and then pipe down, which makes like no sense of how without electrical pumping that it would work. But still, what's even the purpose of it? If you have an electrical pump in your water system, you already have the pressure. Why would you need to build that? It makes zero sense.
Yeah, I mean, maybe as an excess air valve, but I mean, maybe it's one column of 40 columns that were out of the front of a really, really big building, and it was part of the plumbing system.
Right, that exactly what I kind of.
I mean, it just looks like it should. Yeah, it looks like it should be. There should be a Parliament building wrapped around it. It's just.
So we're told this is 1871. They're doing this in 1871, St. Louis. Just to give you a comparison.
And how tall is that one? Do we know?
I don't know if I have the height on that one. I don't think I have that right here. So, but it
tall.
is
I mean, 'cause I'm just
taller.
thinking scaffolding, right? Especially on it's pretty hard. It's a lot harder to make scaffolding for like a column than it is for a building, because you've got a smaller base at the bottom that you've got to work from. You know, so it's they did a good job.
Yeah, they did a great job, didn't they? Amazing. So that water tower supposedly is taller than Pompey's Pillar, which is a freestanding Corinthian column in Alexandria, Egypt, that was said to have been erected between 298 and 302 AD. Just for comparison,
really? So just a couple of time frames difference.
Exactly. And you see the base here.
What
Let's go back here. Looks kind of similar there.
And that one actually looks older, doesn't it? The one in Egypt looks newer than the other one.
It does. And then this is in Istanbul, Turkey, the column of the Goths, and it was said to have been erected sometime between 200 and 400 AD. So again, another.
So what are these?
Really old one.
Another 2,000 years, yeah. What could they possibly be? Do you think that they're literally just? I mean, it doesn't even make sense that they're just like the lone column left from a building, because what are they standing on? Clearly they would have had to have been part of the building, right? So what I wonder what column means. I was just thinking golem, very similar to golem, but there's got to be something else going on there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, clearly these are not part of another structure, as you're saying.
Clearly, yeah. They look like they should be, but yeah, when you think about it, that no way. They're definitely just built as a single standing column with a nice little platform on the top, a flat square on the top.
2,000 years ago.
I don't know. Do you land your banana on there and refuel with a bit of mercury?
You're showing right now, that's not a water tower, though, right? That's just a column.
That's what we're told. These are the stories that were told about them. The one in St. Louis is a water tower, and this one in Egypt and the one in Turkey are both pillars.
Right, exactly. So it's more
but
likely
the one in St. Louis isn't.
Yeah, so this
it's
one's
not really a water
tower.
tower, that one, is it? Because it doesn't have a tank in it.
They claim there's a pipe going up and then down, and that it's adding water pressure to it. But it's like you'd already have to have that same amount of pressure to get it up there in the first place. Like, it doesn't add any extra benefit whatsoever. It just makes no sense.
To come down again.
It's more likely that they are just these leftover resonating pillars, the obelisks or whatever. And Michelle, I believe you were getting into some research. Was it you that of how these obelisks and columns are putting out frequencies?
A little bit. I got all kinds of.
Yeah, right. It's one of the projects. It's something that you were looking into. And David Soretta, if you've heard of him, he's a famous ufologist out of the States. He's on both Rex's Leak Project fairly often and Alien Scientists channel there. But he goes in depth in the actual advanced mathematics of proving and calculating the specific frequencies being emitted by these towers, and that they all actually seem to be emitting the 432 Schumann, as well as a couple of other.
I just want to. That's a good point, and I just want to make another.
So that's why they're no longer used. I was just
because let's look at
if water trickled down that. Oh, sorry, Michelle. If those pipes did go up and come out the top, and water then trickled down that pipe that on the outside, what would that? I don't know.
That could definitely have some sort of effect for sure. That in some old technology,
resonance going through the
electrical differential, depending on the materials used.
Yeah.
Also, that
kind of explain the pipes. Or a
the
fountain.
metal pipes with the water going up, that could actually create a much larger electrical differential than just an antenna if you have that moving water going up and down that high into the atmosphere. That actually would make sense.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. You're talking about that got me thinking about something. It looks to me like the neck of a cello, or I guess the big ones.
Nice.
It's a bit. What's the name of the biggest one? This here. This here. See?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh God.
That is resonance too, like the ends of those musical instruments.
Yeah.
One called, man, none of us can think of it right.
Oh no, I keep thinking tuba, cello,
This
violin,
is,
cello.
Oh, so this is called
bass,
the neck of
double
it.
bass, double bass.
Bass. Let's do it. Bass neck. Thank you.
Right?
I couldn't remember the name of the biggest one.
Yeah, and
no,
it's
not
totally
that kind of bass. Not that one.
Vibration,
So
so
here's
that
the
makes
guitar.
perfect
Put double in front of it. Put double bass.
I'm looking for the biggest in the violin family. like that.
That should be. There's another one called the. Is it the sousaphone? SOUZA. Is that right? And it's literally it's the frequency it plays is so low that you can't hear it with a human ear. And this thing, you've got to stand on a ladder to play it.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's a
no, maybe that's not it. Yeah, no, I must have the name wrong. But there is definitely this double bass thing. I can't remember what it's called. Anyone in chat? And this thing is it's made for giants. It's made like literally you have to stand on.
That's what it is. Oboe or oboe or
oboe.
Something like oboe. I
Standing
think
upright bass.
Does that sound right?
So this picture here on the right says double bass neck with a pre-carved scroll, which looks just like our Corinthian column here.
It does, yeah.
So I would say that's
at the
good
end of a musical instrument and at the end of a column.
Right.
Like they're both at
so
the
end of
extremities, aren't they?
The violin family instruments.
100%.
Looks like that.
That is a very good correlation that you just made, Michelle, that they're made on the end of musical instruments for resonance, of sound resonance, and then that would explain why they have this exact same shape and architecture, geometry in all of these devices that we've already come to the conclusion are some sort of resonance harvesting technology, and that geometry is specifically used for the same thing.
And just to make a point along the same lines, because I think it's all part of an interconnected system, you've got this old tower here with the same slot windows that we saw on the water towers. You know, we've got our observation deck here. We've got our Antiquitech here. And then right here, right next to it, we have the same thing going on.
A pyramid.
Taller antenna. And here's, I think, a really interesting point. And, you know, again, I think this represents a civilization that existed from ancient times until relatively modern, is that these are oriented in the same direction. Just like the pyramids were oriented to the cardinal points. These are also oriented in the same direction. And I would hazard to guess it's probably north, south, east, west.
That is another very, very good, astute correlation you have made again. I love how many dots you connect, Michelle.
Been looking at this stuff for a long time now. I need a life. My life is very boring.
Well, I don't know about you, but this is the highlight.
Here you go. This massive instrument. That massive instrument was an octabass. Now I've lost who told me that. Thank you, whoever it was. But yeah, the octabases, and there's a few. You know, there are a few giant-sized instruments around. You know, and where did these all come from? Like literally, the octabass, you can't hear it. You can't because the frequency is too low for our hearing.
Go. Thank
See
you,
that?
person
See
in
that?
the audience. Look at that.
See-
That's what I was looking for. I didn't know what. It's like,
I think
I knew there was a really big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Octabass.
Kelly. So it was Kelly Dolan. Thank you, Kelly.
All right, Kelly. Good job. Okay, so I think that definitely gives us a clue as to what the columns were doing.
There's also those little scrolling shapes that they cut into them, that the S shapes and the shape of the actual body. You know, with those sort of inserts. It's very similar to what we see in all the, you know, on the facading. You know, that kind of geometry.
Yeah. Is this what you're talking about? The S?
I mean, those two cutouts, put them together, it's like a Vesica Pisces almost.
Very interesting. I
So
want a time machine and go back for a day.
And then,
oh, I know, I dream of it. But then I watch all of.
And now we have guitars, right?
Right, but I watched.
I was just going to say, now all the guitars and the basses, they don't have the scrolls anymore. It's been taken out.
Yeah, that's a good point too. But the not the astral. Well, it's astral projection, but the what are they called? When you stare at goats. The movie. It's about the people that can go through the mind.
Men Who Stare at Goats. Far seeing. Remote viewing.
Remote viewing. There we go. And all the remote viewers, and yeah, especially Farsight. Michelle, have you ever seen the channel Farsight?
No. Is that part of the Farsight Institute?
Yeah, the Farsight.
I mean, I think I've heard of it, but I haven't seen any of the videos.
I'd recommend checking out some of like their ones on like older views that they do, where they go back into time, because it's like they haven't done the research we have, but what they describe in their visions truly sounds like what we're pulling up and coming up with and like envisioning out of our own research. So it's like, it gives me the hope that one day when I'm old, but much older with gray hair and have had the time to put in and train myself astutely, that I'll be able to mentally time travel myself. And you know, maybe we'll see it in our dreams first, but we can hopefully consciously be able to travel there if we can't physically travel to see it.
I'll trade you, Bernie. 30 years. I'll give you 30 years.
Sonia and Callum on the job.
Ahead if you'll give me 30 years back.
Well, okay, I guess that's why I will get on how to make the monoatomic gold, silver plasma water, so you can start drinking it. Because honest to God, people say I haven't aged a day over the last 8 years since I started drinking it. So I do think I look.
Yeah, we need to do a how-to on that. Definitely need to do a how-to. But I'm waiting for the flux capacitor, Bernie. How's the flux capacitor coming along, mate?
Well, that'll be our talk with Mike on Friday.
Very cool.
I will shut up now and mute myself and let you continue your presentation, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm quickly
thanks, guys.
running
it's all good stuff. Okay. So this is the Riverside Water Tower in Chicago, and it's now an art gallery and museum. And like the Grand Avenue Water Tower in St. Louis that we just looked at, the Riverview Water Tower was said to have been built in 1871. Now, there was a lot of stuff going on in 1871. Let me tell you. Busy year.
What year was the Civil Wars? Or the Civil
1861 to 1865.
So literally only a few years after that. And then wasn't there like the Canadian-American War or something in between that time, or the Spanish War? There's just wars.
Right? I mean, and you know, God knows if they actually happened, because 1871 was like the year that the U.S. corporation was formed. It was, and the DC became its own separate thing, and you know how the UN is not really part of New York, and the Vatican's really not part of Rome, and the City of London's not really part of the City of London. You know, they were creating these city-states.
Corporatized and turned into the three evil city-states.
Yeah. So that was going on kind of around this time. Karl Marx wrote a pamphlet about communism in 1871. There was an uprising in Paris of the communards, and that's how the name came into being. So it was kind of a time when I think the controllers were putting a lot of the pieces of their reset into place, you know, in terms of how they were going to be doing this. So 1871 was a key year, just like 1851 was a key year with things going on. And this one also has a freestanding elevator shaft in it.
Right, like,
and this one from 1871. And again, this is what the historical record talks about.
So an elevator shaft literally like 2 years before the elevator was invented and before mass electricity adoption. But hey, they just decided that they were going to engineer that into a building for something that didn't even exist yet.
Well, that's kind of what they like us to believe. So again, they're calling it a water tower. And this one was, you know, again, so this says Jenny, and William LeBaron Jenny was the lead architect on this. Again, 1871. Now, I want to compare this with the Galata Tower in Istanbul, Turkey. It looks kind of similar at night when it's all lit up. And this particular tower in Istanbul just dominates.
And look at that alignment with the moon.
Isn't that amazing? And they do that. Lighthouses and towers and capitol buildings and mosques and
you showed that a lot. I remember that. Right?
They line up. You know, this
there
is
has to be something with the moon as well as the sun of them energizing, collecting resonant energy, or interacting with it somehow, for sure.
Among other things, I mean, I think these were multi-purpose connectors, if you will, between cosmic energy and terrestrial infrastructure. Okay. Is Cambell back yet?
Nope.
I don't want to do too much without him. Especially the
like look at the, and how are they all like the exact same, like not just the architecture but like the actual design, like to the most custom little brick and weave and bend and curve and colors, and it's ridiculous. And how they claim it's made during different time periods by different cultures that had no interaction with each other yet.
Exactly. And so you've got the Galata Tower in Istanbul, which is situated between the Bosphorus Strait and what is called the Golden Horn. It's directly across from the main part of historical Constantinople. So they changed the name from Constantinople to Istanbul. And that's part of how they have obscured the history. This was part of the historical Ottoman Empire. In the history I read about Galata, the name is said to have come from the Greek Galatai, referring to a Celtic tribe of Gauls who were said to have camped here during Hellenistic times before moving on to the Galatia region of central Anatolia, which was also Turkey. So why would they name a place permanently for temporary inhabitants that were only passing through? And it's described as a medieval stone watchtower and not a water tower. And then you have the, you know, definite similarity in appearance between the Galata Tower, the Riverside Water Tower, and the Prospect Park water tower in Minneapolis, which is also called the Witch's Hat Water Tower. And what do we have going on here? You know, the tops of these 3 towers all look like witches' hats.
Right.
And if you're going to use that analogy, they all look that way.
And that's actually something too, that like all of the old caps and hats look like they were actually interacting with like the atmospheric energy or some sort of energy field as well. And that especially like the gold crowns and the jewels and stuff like that, it's like gotta be a aura generating or amplifying device of some sort. But it's like that's a very good point, that how so many of these tops do resemble the different types of upper echelon hats or the mystic cultures hats and garbs.
Right. And why do witches have a hat that shape in our culture? I mean, it's not my favorite holiday, you know, sorry anybody out there that really enjoys it, but you know, I see no reason to celebrate vampires and zombies. You know, but
Exactly.
I thought we'd been doing that for the last 2 years.
I mean, I'm just saying I'm not a Halloween fan. But this water tower on the right, Cambell, is called the Witch's Hat Water Tower. This is the Riverside Water Tower in Illinois. It's outside of Chicago, which has the same kind of thing. And then this is in Istanbul, Turkey. This was said to have been a medieval stone tower. And, you know, didn't say anything about it being a water tower.
It's the same. I did a video on cathedrals. You know, you get some cathedrals that are 2,000 years old and they look exactly the same as a cathedral that's 100 years old. It's like, yeah, come on. But it's interesting because it's the shape, isn't it? Or the witch's hat, because even those things they put on the road, they call them witch's hats. So it's more talking about the shape than an actual hat that a witch wears.
Right. Yeah, you're talking about the traffic cones, right?
Yeah, the orange, yeah.
Kind of the fluorescent orange ones or whatever color they happen to be.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I find interesting is this being right next to a train station. And I looked up train stations in Istanbul and the Turkish drove me crazy. So I didn't really write any down, but there's a number of what I think are metro stations around this structure here. So again, I'm like convinced there's a connection with the railroads and canals and starforts and these water towers, because you find them.
I mean, of the Crystal Tower, the Crystal Palace. It's got a tower on each end of it, just like these ones.
Right, and it has above ground railroad and below ground
a train station
as well.
Exactly.
So, and I was saying earlier while you were gone, Cambell, as this water tower was said to have been built in 1871, the same as the Corinthian column in St. Louis, and it also was said to have a electric elevator in it, like the Sulphur Springs water tower.
And so 1871. So when was the Eiffel Tower? That was the first elevator, wasn't it?
Sometime in that same time period. I'm going to get to Eiffel Towers here in just a moment, because I'll get there in just a moment. I'm almost there.
I'm just thinking, because these have got elevators in them, but literally the elevator was maybe 5 years old at the point when these were made, and they're just throwing elevators in them.
Right. So we're told. And again, are we looking at an airship docking station? It sure looks like they could be.
But the elevators, right? Exactly.
I believe it.
They've all got, the landing platforms. And I mean, that's a good point. Were these, witches' hats, were they put on top after the fact? As a bit of a...
No, I think they were an original shape.
Occult symbolism.
I think it's an
the
original shape.
It's an energy harvesting geometry.
I'm just wondering
for sure.
where would the airship dock, and how would the people?
Well,
I suppose,
see,
that would
the
work
rope
because
goes
they
to
have
the
a front
very
that comes
top
out. You
of
dock
the
the front
cone.
on, and then
yeah, right. So cone on cone, it actually makes perfect sense to be an airship to have that, which is how that's actually the perfect geometry for the airship to dock. There's that famous docking on top of the New York skyscraper or something.
Empire State, or I think or the Chrysler building.
Yeah, the Chrysler, and I think it actually shows specifically how like the very tip end of the airship goes to the very top, like point of the cone or whatnot, and then by this the rim of the like what you'd call the hat or whatnot, the base is literally the walking platform, and that size geometry like is the perfect fit for the airships when docking.
Which made me think of a Victrola horn.
And I can't find.
It's kind of like a witch's hat too, only in a different position.
Exactly, and that's the geometry of how these cones literally are amplifying geometry. They resonate and create
it's just
power or energy, sound energy.
It's just working in reverse, right? It's fun. Well, I mean, kind of. It's getting the music and funneling it out, right? From the point where, as on a building, it's getting it from the ether and funneling it down, like into something rather than funneling it out through the funnel.
Funneling energy up from the ground into the airship too, right? And it would come to that point, to the climax there of it, if your higher dipoles on the other side, and then because you always have the anode cathode reaction of one putting ionized energy down and one putting it up. So there's endless possibilities for it to make sense and have applicable purposes to this airship steampunk world that must have existed.
Right. And I just want to make the point that this is all well built, highly integrated, same template in different parts of the world, same. It wasn't built randomly, obviously. I mean, you don't have that degree of correlation randomly.
Exactly.
This was very well planned, and the narrative falls apart based on that alone. So
I've got an airship pic here. Do you want me to show it quickly, or?
Sure. I think that's important since we're talking about it for sure.
I'll just quickly.
I stopped sharing.
Oh gosh, where's my screen gone? Hang on one sec. There. So there we go. Can you see that?
Exactly. And that is
you can see that the point does come out. And
did we lose Michelle? We lost Michelle.
Oh, no.
She'll be back.
She doesn't like my pictures. I know. And I mean, look at this. Literally, just looks like the top of the towers we're looking at, or like the top of what we're told is a lighthouse.
Exactly.
Flying.
There we go.
There's another one.
Got you back.
Yep. Sure looks like it to me, guys.
Right? Like that's the same witch hat design there, right? And all of those towers, that looks exactly like all the water towers you've been showing.
It does.
The windows have been replaced with a little bit more filler and a couple things stripped off, and that is the infrastructure for a south or a western world and old world based airship travel and just complete infrastructure. Really, it's
So
Cambell,
there's
can I go back one? Like that's the reality of it, the one you have there. Oh, no, we lost it. But yeah, how we're told the first balloon is just that little one with like in France in like 1700 or whatnot. That's just like a little ball, and then like the little rim on it there. It was like the drawing that you had up second last there, Cambell. But it's just such a joke. It's like there's no way. There's Da Vinci's drawings and stuff of working what look like absolute working devices that are much older than that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole story with the golden age of Zeppelins, and the German Zeppelins figure largely in that.
Yeah.
So again,
and how many
it really
movies? How many of these sort of steampunk type movies? They're always full of airships.
right. And again, it was part of the original civilization, and it just got taken over like everything else.
Chris has a very good point right here.
Yeah, and
that used as a grounding rod to convert the water into the hydrogen for the airships, and that's
the
a
hydrogen.
simple tech that would explain
Exactly.
the towers and the design and everything. I think you nailed it on the head there, Chris.
There's refueling stations as well, for sure.
Oh, and then why would we have the elevators in the water towers? No, it's to carry your luggage up to the airship that you're docking onto. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, the narrative doesn't make sense.
Oh, come on. More sense than going up and looking at a water tank. Come on.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again because I just have a few more slides. See this? I had to stop with water towers, and this is just a few samples. Didn't have enough room for bell towers. That's a whole nother one. Okay, so this one is Milwaukee, and this is the North Point Water Tower, and it was said to have been built between 1873 and 1874 in the style of Victorian Gothic as part of Milwaukee's first public waterworks.
I just don't know how that can be claimed to be a water tower.
Kind of looks like the other ones.
The bloody, I don't want to say Disney, but it looks like one of those fairy castles
it does.
on the very top, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say Cinderella's castle from Disney.
I heart fairies. Is this
Cinderella? That's
your home?
much better. Let's don't mention the D word.
Okay, sorry about that. And again, 1873, 1874, that time frame. You've got this massive building right next to it. I mean, they're both massive.
Yeah.
It could be
well, that's a 4 or 5 story building next to it.
Right. So, again, it could be a docking station.
It would make sense, especially with the train stations. You can imagine that their system of transport was obviously a lot, and their life was slower paced, right? We think we have to jump in planes and get, across the plane in 4 hours or something, but theirs was obviously, they were cruising around in airships, but airships go to train stations, right? So airships are for going across water and across countries and things, and you get to your train, and that's for going across the country, and they go into cities, and they have like the trams and the canals and things. So they had this whole integrated transport system, as far as I can see it. They just had their different types of transport for the different lengths and where you were going, and it was all integrated by the looks of it.
Free energy. I'm sure of it.
Free energy.
It was
no
again,
pollution.
I don't know the scientific terms for it, but it was like the railroads, all the rail lines above ground, below ground, streetcars. So railroads, subways, streetcars, trolley parks, so the amusement parks, they're all generating this energy self-perpetuating machine. I mean, help me. It was all going into it and coming back out again. That's all. I don't know how to put it.
Yeah. It's kind of perpetual motion, I guess. Is that the right
Something like
word?
that. Something
It's
like
a
that. Yeah.
giant closed
Like a
circuit
self-powering system.
Closed circuit, did you
closed
say?
circuit, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it's a massive closed circuit, but like the railroad connected to like the parks and the racetracks and stuff, that would be your ground closed circuit. And then it would be open circuit through the towers, the cathedral spires, up into the ionosphere circuit that is the natural electric field of the Earth. And that's where you're getting your power back and forth from. And that it's a massive power differential or electrical differential between the charge of these massive rail lines. Like that's another thing. Like trains today, half of them you see with nothing above the wire. They're electrical, that just run off the natural electricity off of the actual rail itself. And that's it measures, like it's a huge electrical difference along those lines. And grounding wires in power lines as well can zap people and kill people, even though they're supposed to be neutral, nothing in it, but it's a massive electrical potential in that iron, in the copper, just the cable itself over that huge difference. And then so those would be your closed systems with your resistant workloads in it on the macro scale, and then it then connected up and charged through the ionosphere.
Sounds good to me.
And it's a good.
I just know it's all connected.
Very good point that all trains are metal. Like, has anyone ever seen a wooden train? Ever seen a train with wooden wheels? Ever seen, like, we see everything, right? You go back in time and everything starts off as wood, except for trains and trams.
Yeah,
because clearly they would not work unless it was metal on metal.
That's a really good
Sorry,
point.
what was that?
All train wheels are only metal, and that would be to pick up the electrical difference. You'd think they might put rubber on it to make it more secure, to not wear out as fast and all of that. But no, that you nailed it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to point
can't
out
break the circuit, and similar things with chips. Oh, sorry, Michelle.
It's okay. They used to be called
Let's
traction.
not get Bernie started on that though, or you won't get through this.
I'm close to the end. So they used to be called traction companies.
No, you're doing well.
Iowa. So
traction.
I want to point out,
trains. Oh, really?
So I just want to point that out because when I look at the older trolley systems and train systems, a lot of times they were part of a traction company, and that probably plays in there somehow.
That's clearly why they're called train tracks.
You know, the Houghton County Traction Company.
Traction.
And so this is before
traction,
they
which
started.
Is very similar. Very similar to tractor, right? And a tractor is very similar to a train.
So this is before they started taking them out. This is when they were everywhere. So this is the Houghton County Traction Company, is on Lake Superior, small peninsula that's part of the state of Michigan. And there's no trains there now. No traction company there now. But I bring that up because you can see with this short line Iowa traction railway between Mason City, Iowa and Clear Lake, Iowa, it's like I think 10 mile or 6.2 kilometers, something like that. It's still run the old way. So you've got the electricity on the outside like that.
Like the cable, that's okay, like a touch cable,
right?
like the trams. Okay, yeah, right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love how electrical trains are the quote unquote old way, and how everybody thinks electrical vehicles are this new technology. And it's like, no, we've just been suppressed of this technology for the last 100 years, and it was around long before our time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so that's an
Sure, we've
example
all
of
seen that
something
photo of
that's
1900 with all the cars charging. Have you seen that one? All the old vintage cars, and they're literally all hooked up to their chargers.
I haven't seen that one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
To look for it.
I'll stop
So-
interrupting. I'll
No,
just
you're
hit my
fine.
mute button.
Sorry, no, you're fine. It's the back and forth is good. So, since you're the word guy, Campbell, you might kind of put that in on your list. Traction for these early streetcar
Traction,
companies.
definitely. Traction, tractor, track. Yep.
I think there's something there. So this
There's
is the
definitely.
warp.
I've always thought about the steam, the big steam engines. There's no way that they were built to burn wood, especially when you look into how many of them actually exploded. Like when they were doing this back in the early 1900s and that 1800s, half of the trains blew up, like literally, and they were ripping apart the metal on these trains. They just blew them to smithereens. And inside a lot of them, they're full of like metal rods, all these metal rods in the big front combustor bit. So there's something else going on there.
What it sounds like to me is like with the early streetcars, like starting around the 1850s, they had to use mules and horses to pull them. And I think they were using whatever means they had of providing the fuel for these things until they could get the electricity up again. And so, you went from the horses pulling the trolleys to the electrification of the streetcars, and then within 30 years, most of them were gone. So probably the same thing with the trains. They had to use coal and wood until they could get the electricity going. It's a recurring theme when I look at these places.
Right, and it fits in with the first photos of like the Trans-Siberian Railway being dug up, not built, but literally dug up, and most likely the same case with all of North America. And it just like any common sense, when you see the photos of these trams in cities being pulled by horses on these rail lines that already exist, and it's like, nobody would build things backwards. The rail first, the cars first, and then have to have horses pulling them. No, they were working electrically beforehand. Something happened that changed the power source to no longer be there. The reset happened, and they were just left over and being reused, and thus why they were hidden away and trashed. And especially that one town in the middle of the Amazon jungle that had these identical trolleys and train lines and whatnot. That one right there, I think, just is the biggest narrative destroyer.
Manaus. Look up trolleys in Manaus, and they were there the turn of the century, and it's in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. One other example of that are canals as well. Early canal boats were pulled by mules too. And every indication is the canals were electrified as well.
I've seen that, right? That also makes, like, what you're saying makes perfect sense, but not what the image is of, like, okay, they have these horses pulling these ships through these canals, yet, like, no, they're added on. Like the horse, you can see that it's like so awkward and wasn't meant to be there, and the canal was not designed to have a horse pulling the ship whatsoever. And like you needed something more massive to have made those canals than these horses to begin with, like.
But
Well,
that's
look at
what
the
we're
bridges
taught.
in the canals. Every time you come up to a bridge, you have to unhook from the horse, take the horse around the other side of the bridge, get onto the bridge, and then hook back up again. And what, they're going to build this massive system and not even have a little place for the horses to walk? Come on.
Right? Like, just, it was not engineered for that. It's completely backwards.
Right.
No.
Yep.
Exactly.
Details. And what I call the John Wayne version of history. You know, because that's what you find in, you know, museums.
John Wayne.
You know,
What?
they give the history
His name
of
was Merrill.
yeah. I can't think of his original name, but yeah, something like that.
Merrill something, yeah. Not a
Yeah.
very masculine name, that's for sure.
Not a very masculine name. So yeah, so when they gave us a fake history, which they're still telling us, you know, every canal museum you go to is going to have the the old way. It's ridiculous. So
Yeah.
anyway,
they won't even touch the man-made edges. I mean, you can't even find anything on that. They just ignore it. Oh no, what are you talking about? It's just naturally formed brick edges. Come on. Like there's no narrative at all for that.
Nope. Not a good one anyway. So this slide is showing the Warbeck Water Tower in Blackpool, England, and it was said to have been built in 1932 to serve the heavily residential areas of central Blackpool and high-rise homes. And it's located on Leys Road, Leys, right here. The Warbeck Reservoir Water Tower. Leys.
L-E, did you say? L-E-Y?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like
L-E-Y-S.
ley line?
Like ley line. Yeah. Nice of them to tell us.
Nice.
They
It doesn't
do that
look
occasionally.
very tall. Is that a big one, or it looks a bit squat, that one, doesn't it?
It's probably squat, but I mean, just look at the solid construction, you know, the older stonework, the columns, you know, again, they were building something like that in 1932 in between World War I and World War II in Great Britain.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's another one. And then the Blackpool Tower kind of leads to the Blackpool, or the water tower kind of leads to the Blackpool Tower. And it was said to have been inspired by the Eiffel Tower, and that at the time it was open to the public in 1894, it was the tallest man-made structure in the British Empire. Okay, so you've got, you know, this nice architecture down here. There's quite a nice theater in there. I think it got damaged by fire, but they managed to repair it. But the New Brighton Tower on Merseyside in the Wirral Peninsula was said to have been built between 1898 and 1900, but it was demolished in 1919 and its metal was sold for scrap. And then this building here at the base of the tower, that building was destroyed by a fire, dear, in 1969, the Tower Ballroom. And the Beatles performed there. It's quite well known. You know, this beautiful structure at the base of this, you know, massive tower, based on the Eiffel Tower,
on top
right?
of it.
The towers are on top of these.
That's on top
these
of it.
buildings.
And is the narrative that the building was there and then they put the tower on?
I don't know. It just talks about the tower.
I'm not sure.
So this one was said to have been, the tower was said to have been built in Blackpool in 1894, inspired by the Eiffel Tower.
So that's in England, correct?
Right, that's in England. I'll show you another map here in just a moment.
For what purpose?
And then,
do they say why? Landmark, no doubt. No reason.
To commemorate Tartaria.
Just to try and piss off the French.
So they had the same thing going on here in New Brighton. And if you look on a map, they're really not that far from each other. As a matter of fact, in a line of sight, they're lined up pretty well.
similar constructed coastline
Yeah.
that definitely like that. That's one I guarantee, Michelle, if you went into, or you probably already have in past works and show that whole coastline is definitely engineered and artificially structured.
Right. And again, that
So
coastline is the
do
world
we-
over.
Yes.
A lot of these are in line of sight view. So, like when you were showing the pictures before and they had other towers in the background, like, do we think they were transferring energy from tower to tower? Is that why they're line of sight, and within a certain distance, they're literally Wi-Fiing stuff to each other?
Most likely was the case, and yeah, especially the smaller frequency, smaller band waves would have needed to be in line of sight, but it was probably them pulsing the ionosphere and being able to harvest the electricity back down, or if there's two that close that were within line of sight, one might have been the anode, one might have been the cathode, where one's taking energy from the ionosphere and one was putting energy back up from the grounding itself. And then there might have been like a connecting grounding cable underneath the ground that connected both of them, and or a processing like transistor station in between them. That would be my best guess, because anything else does not make sense. And Michelle, have you seen all of the blueprint drawings of these sort of tower lakes, like the one specifically, London City supposedly had a competition to design them and whatnot?
I saw that.
Well,
Never built it.
Most of them look like pictures rather than renderings and stuff like that. And that, why would they put so much effort into designing these and having these in that time frame unless they had some sort of applicable use case function, right?
I think the one you're talking about was at Wembley Stadium. Was supposed to be at Wembley Stadium, if I remember.
Yeah, but then it's like in Japan they have one built from the same time frame. Germany, I believe there's a couple. Russia, there's former Soviet Union, there's several of them, I think.
But keep in mind, that's what they tell us.
Exactly. Right?
That's what they tell us, that we built this. We built this recently. And, you know, I just want to point out, so the New Brighton Tower is gone and the Blackpool is still standing. The New Brighton Tower was destroyed in within 19 years of its being built. It's what we're told. It was built between 1898 and 1900 and demolished in 1919. Is when the tower part of this was demolished, and then the rest of it went up in fire in 1969. So the ballroom and everything.
So they built a landmark architectural building that would be a tourist attraction, and then decided to tear it down only 10, 15 years after they built it, is what you're saying.
That's kind of what the narrative says. The other interesting thing I want to point out is, if you look at this picture here, look at the age and gender of the people in the picture.
Yeah,
that's
right.
And you know, where are the adults? Where are the girls, for that matter? You know, they're all young boys.
And showing off a lot of leg for that time frame too.
Exactly. These two guys here, especially.
Killing England.
You know, so that kind of speaks to the whole orphan thing to me.
Time. And like, look at the two capacitor sides on the right side picture there, that just look like your standard cathedral harvesting Antiquitech.
Exactly.
Yeah, just
and then
the tower in the middle.
I'm wondering if this is a tidal TIDAL thing going on here, because you've got all the water here.
Good point.
But not here. Like they're out in the middle of the canal.
Yes.
You kind of see the masonry there.
Oh, and look at those boats. They look like they have the wire-styled masts, not like not a windblown, but what like Philip Drusen and whatnot show a lot of pictures of compared more of like an atmospheric style powering as opposed to wind sail power.
Not made for sails, yeah.
And I would much more believe the narrative if they said these towers were water towers. Right?
I hear that.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely suspicious stuff. So the last thing I just want to talk about, I'm done with the PowerPoint that I had put together. Yeah, the bell towers would have been too much. I just want to point out, actually, I'm going to share it one more time. Okay, so I just wanted to point out on the Eiffel Tower replicas.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was said to have been completed in 1889, and the inspiration for the creation over 50 similar towers around the world. Most are not exact replicas, but there are many that resemble it closely, while others look slightly different. And
in 1889, that's later than I thought.
So Watkins Tower.
Elevators were invented before then, weren't they? But the Eiffel Tower was where he proved that they were safe. Basically, he wrote it and wrote it down with a safety brake. And so that those towers we saw before, that was before that, and they had elevators.
The water towers, the 1871
one. Siemens, wasn't it? Siemens.
The Riverside
elevators. Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say I doubt the stories that we've been told about the construction of the Eiffel Tower and the rest of these towers. I mean, I think it was all they are already, and these are the stories that were told. But this is the one you were talking about, Bernie, is Watkins Tower at Wembley. It was said to have never been completed. It began in 1891 and demolished in 1907. And that would have been the tallest one.
What? So sorry,
so
that
started,
one was built or not built?
They built it for 16 years and then went too hard and knocked it over. What?
Oh wow. No, so that one's actually a new one to me. The one I was talking about was for the actual city of London, that they had a competition and they have all these insane, like so complex, like exponentially more antiquitech-y looking ones that they're supposedly renders, but they actually, most of them look like real photos. I think it was John Levi that originally a couple years ago did one episode on it that I saw the first ones, but I went on to what is it, one of the sites, but literally 35 different ones popped up, and it's just mind-blowing, the different styles and designs, and every single one just has the most advanced antiquitech I've ever seen on it. And it was from a competition in the late or early 1800s, I believe.
Yeah, and this one was from a competition, supposed to have been from a competition starting in 1890.
But that one was built, you said.
Well, it looks like it was built. It says construction started 1891, completed in 1894, opened in 1896, and demolished in 1907.
Totally makes sense. You just demolished your landmarks, right?
And then they, I'm sorry, I think they could Photoshop.
Yeah,
I really do. I think they could Photoshop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's some very dodgy pictures from the French World Fair. Is it? I can't remember. Is it 91, something like that, 1891? And you see all these funny pictures of the Eiffel Tower, and then we've got the pictures of the Eiffel Tower when up the very top of it, it's got like a big landing deck on it. Have you seen that one?
I think I've seen
that's gone
similar
now.
to that.
Ooh, so that right.
I've even seen one with a train or something going through it.
I have not
I don't
seen
know if
that
it was
one.
real. Who knows
So
what's
that
real though,
middle
right?
one,
Yeah.
the middle one there with the ball. That's that design right there on most of the ships, like pre-1800, that supposedly the ball lit up, and also in where is it? Crimea, the big port there. The first pictures of it before the war. And it before it got destroyed, there was those sort of towers with those balls and the wires coming down all over Crimea, and there was never any sort of explanation for what it was, and the drawings looked like it was emitting light out of those globes. So that is fascinating.
And I bring this up because
it looks a lot like that other tower. Is it with the ball? Is it is it in Washington State or Seattle or somewhere? There's some big tower like that.
Yeah, there's Space Needles, and that's another one I've got pulled up here. My point is that all of these Eiffel Tower inspired towers, I think, are just, you know, the explanation given for this pre-existing infrastructure. And the same thing is true of the Statue of Liberty. There's supposed to be hundreds of replicas of the Statue of Liberty around the world. You know, Austria, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, Kosovo, Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Ukraine, United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico,
the symbol of the USA,
South America, Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Asia, in Malaysia, India, Singapore, China, Israel, Japan, and Pakistan.
And Pakistan. And it's
Philippines.
Like half of those replicas were made before the Statue of Liberty too, I'm guessing, right? Like
Australia.
In Adelaide. We got one too.
Yes,
a 30-foot one.
Replica.
Oh my gosh.
At a shopping complex. I'm just giving that as those.
So, I mean, obviously the Statue of Liberty is ISIS, right?
Yeah, it's something other than a representation of something other than what we're told, which is the replica of the one in New York. Yeah. So could be the you know feminine energy goddess kind of thing, but I don't think it's
the torch,
I don't think
right?
it's at all what we're told.
No, well, the torch is, you know, there's a lot of you know, old sort of stories of religion. They always talk about the flame and keeping the flame alight and the eternal flame and, you know, all this kind of stuff. That's what I see that torch as. It's like keeping the eternal flame lit, which goes back to the whole Frisian story and Oriolinda and all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, always talking about this eternal flame, which is us, I guess, when you get down on it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing is the Space Needle, which is what you were talking about.
That one. Yeah.
So you got the one in Seattle that's the most famous, but then you've got the one in China, you know, China and Calgary in your neck of the woods.
And of course, in Men in Black, the movie, that one in Seattle turned into a spaceship and flew away. It was actually, the story was, it's just a dock for a spaceship in the movie. So could they be telling us something?
I think they're telling us something without telling. They're telling us.
Hidden in plain sight. And it's a good point. I'm glad you brought up these supposed Space Needle towers, in that the only rational reason with now what we know is for them to still be building this style of architecture that's essentially useless, like to put that much energy into like the tower where you just have a couple of floors at the very top would be that it has some sort of still used energy harvesting or broadcasting application or technology applied in it, and that how our cities are these macro processing chips and circuits, with all the work that you've done in showing that, Michelle, as well as you too, Campbell, and originally Michael Tellinger showing the ancient ones being macro city boards, is that whatever power structure or interference that's happened on this planet, they've been in control, or some group is still utilizing and has knowledge of this higher energy technology and usage, and are still in today's world applying it, using it, building it, and hiding it from the masses.
And hiding it from us.
Mm.
So this one,
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay,
Sure.
I think it must be this one. Trying to figure out which one it is. What I'm looking at, okay, I guess this is that the Skylon Tower? I'm looking at this one right here. I mean, look at the size of that thing. And I'm not sure if that's
How
the
old's that
Hillbrow
one?
Tower.
'Cause it's 71, they say.
If that's the one in Johannesburg, I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah, I think. Oh, in South Africa.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah, because that one doesn't look familiar to me. And
Okay.
I've seen the one that's like in Germany.
Let me go
Oh,
back.
is it Sydney, Connor?
Yeah, there's one in Sydney.
Because I think
That's
there's one
in
in Sydney
Macau.
too called the Centrepoint Tower that looks similar to that.
I think it's here. Just find it. Sorry about that, guys. Got all kinds of advertising on this one.
So,
Okay, so
and this is
this
the thing
must be
about
the last one.
when they go into cities, they
Yep.
always open up, new bits, right? They have the new divisions. So you can imagine if you go in and find a city, it's not that hard to keep all this stuff hidden, especially if the city's, overgrown and that. You just clean up a bit and that's your house. And then you clean up another section and that's your new housing division. Now people can go there and live. And all the other stuff that's there that they're cleaning up and that, no one goes there or knows about it. So, all these towers that were built in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, like they could have been there. We just, they're just in areas where people didn't go. And if they really don't want you to go there, oh, well, it's just a government base. Sorry. It's an army base. It's not a hard thing to do. Like people think it's a hard thing to keep this stuff hidden, but it's really not. It's really not. Look around today. Look around today, right? Don't go out of your house. Okay.
Right. We've all been living essentially for 2 years now in under martial law and full out police states everywhere, with everyone essentially sacrificing, giving up all of our rights and freedoms, and nobody at all, except for maybe 1% of us, and 99% of the people probably watching this and in our stream being that 1% that are resisting saying something about it and trying to oppose it. But it's like 5 years ago, if you talked to the average person and suggested that we'd be living in this sort of dystopian reality, they would just laugh at you and be like, oh, I would fight to the death and not let that happen. And yet here they are succumbing to the jab and everything else, which is just insanity. But
I would venture to say that the percentage is
how
higher.
easy it is to do.
Yes, that is true.
I think the percentage of people
higher.
that see what's going on now, especially, and I think that's one of the reasons it's being allowed to play out this way, is to wake people up. Wake up. They don't want us to know any of this. And I'm sure you're right, Bernie. I'm sure they're using all of that energy and all of that tech, what they have left of it, they're using
Exactly.
And using against us.
Right? Could be what's powering the supposed prison planet that the shell around us that doesn't let us out and traps us.
But but here's the thing, and it's really important to understand this. Everything they're doing is completely criminal and illegal. It's against universal law. They can't do what they've done without our consent. They've gotten our consent by lying to us.
Exactly.
So and once we know the game, once people start waking up and withdrawing their consent, I know it's crazy right now, but they know that. That's why they've worked so hard to keep us asleep.
Exactly. And it's about resisting and never being violent, never giving into their way, never harming your fellow humans with it, but being vocal, showing the evidence, not giving into the narrative, and not letting those that are, I guess, ingrained in the matrix to affect your own understanding and your own reality, and that you don't have to fight with these people, you don't have to try to convince them otherwise, but just don't give in to the peer pressure, and that those that are waking up, encourage them and share the knowledge, share the facts, share the evidence with them, and let them discover the truth. And you're absolutely right, Michelle, that it's definitely more like at least 50, if not 60% of the overall population that's really starting, maybe even 70 or higher, that are really starting to question WTF, what sort of world are we living in? But it's that the TV, the radio, the media, and then also the social media censorship from the major platforms and the algorithm shadow banning everyone's dissent in it, makes it seem like it's everyone that is for this and that is supporting this and whatnot, when in fact it's probably now a smaller percentage than ever that are clinging to power, and why they are using such extreme measures, because they know they're at the very end. They know that what they're doing is not just against universal and natural law, but is actually against human rights and criminal law on so many levels as well. And I believe I was talking to a friend right before this that there was a case in Canadian court that just ruled against one of the COVID tickets or something, but it was on the federal level. So it was a precedent-setting case. And that they're talking about how now if everybody, or just 1 in 10 people start fighting these tickets, fighting these things, and taking it to their local legal ability of fighting back under the system's way, that the whole charade is going to collapse and fall apart in no time at all, because it has no legal basis, it has no mass support, and it's absolutely idiotic.
In my heart, I cannot believe they're going to get away with this. I cannot believe that.
They're not.
That something is going to happen, and we're part. I mean,
They're not.
everybody who's waking up is part of that change that we want to see.
Exactly.
But I just can't even imagine them getting away with this.
It makes me think of.
Yep.
They won't. They've already lost. You see, because time doesn't exist. So if we lost, we wouldn't be here. That's the first point, right?
Good point.
Because we just wouldn't be here. So. Look at it that way. And now I forgot what my other point was.
Right.
But it was good. It was good. So I think that.
Right. And the sketches.
It is poorly. I was going to say, that Biden. Look at the American football, college football. Have you seen what's going on there? I mean, if people seriously think that we're the minority, then what they're doing is they're not watching any alternative social media, and they're only watching the media. But if you turn off the mainstream media and you don't watch it, and all you watch is alternative social media, well, guess what? Suddenly we're 100%. It's all our interpretation, and that's what they're playing with, is how we see it. They're saying, no. Like in Australia, every day, like every hour, every single news bulletin on the radio, oh, Australia's hit 70%. We're going for 80. And I'm thinking, come on, you're lucky if you've got 20%. But they say this because, everyone wants to be, no one wants to be different. Everyone wants to be part of the crowd, right? So they say, well, the majority are doing this, and they think that'll make us think, oh, I better jump in and be part of the majority. But clearly, it's a lie. And I mean, the thing is, they keep saying trust the science, and all these people run around going, why don't you trust the science? And I'm like, well, I do. I listen to the scientists. I don't listen to politicians and newsreaders, because clearly they're not scientists. So I am trusting the science. What are you talking about?
And if they've lied
there's even
to us,
stories coming out now that Dr. Fauci isn't even a real doctor. Have you heard this?
it wouldn't surprise me. I think there's a lot more down that rabbit hole than that.
The whole transgender.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, if they've lied to us this much already about the kinds of things we've talked about tonight, what else have they lied to us about? They're lying to us to this day.
Exactly.
They don't want to lose power. The criminals are in control, have been, gotten themselves in office forever. They make the laws to keep them protected and to hold us accountable when it should be the other way around.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And it's just lie upon lie. They can't keep it together because they don't even know the truth anymore. They're such liars, and everything they do is such a lie, and that's all they talk about and all they do, that they don't even know what the truth is anymore. They just build lies upon lies, and then they try more lies to fix up their old lies, and we see what's happening, right? All they're doing is running faster down that tunnel to implosion, but they think, but that's their only option. They got nothing else they can do.
Right. But they have to keep telling lies.
And of course
they have to. And
they do. And the other good thing is, in all evil contains the seeds of its own destruction. It does. All evil has to kill itself. So there's that as well. It has to implode. This is the entropy. This is the whole entropy thing that they try and tell us, right? Everything eventually goes to entropy. But that's completely the opposite. That's where they're going, but we're not. It's because they're killing themselves. They have to, because they've got no light in them.
Right. So it's a confusing time, but it's also a time where more light is coming in and people are waking up.
The phoenix shall rise.
And, there's good happening every day too. So
exactly. 100%.
Focus on the world you want to create.
That's exactly.
The past is gone.
You don't dwell on negativity.
You can't. Can't change it. If it keeps coming up, go in there and go into yourself and think about it. What's here? Do I feel bad about this? Does this make me feel a bit shameful that I acted this way? Does this make me? And go through it. Look at it with different eyes, and you'll understand. Oh, well, I'm just a person. People make mistakes. I was just a kid. I was just this, whatever. But if you can do that and get it out of you, just peace with it, drop it, then you can go forward without all this baggage, because you can't change the past. You can just change your view of it and your perspective. And if you change that, then you change how it affects you, or how much it affects you or doesn't.
And how to build your future. Make peace with the past so you can control the present to build your better future. And it's funny, like here in Calgary, they've made it where I can't even go into a bar or even my girlfriend's work without presenting a COVID passport. And like I walked into my local pub last night, to meet a friend and like tried using his passport thing, and they caught on right away. They're like, "Oh, you got to get out of here." And I looked around and it was like just us in there. So it was like, okay, enjoy my one friend's freaking one beer in your empty restaurant, because you know this is totally gonna last, guys. Like, just face palm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that we're working on too. Is with a few other people, I'm working on a directory we're going to get launched. So we're going to actually, promote these businesses and let you know where they are. These businesses who are saying, "Yep, come and trade here." We're not going to discriminate, because ultimately that's what we need to do. We need to say, "You don't want us? Fair enough, great. We'll stand by and watch your business collapse and crumble. And anyone who wants to do business, we'll go and support them." And that's another way that we help, the system and all of these massive corporations to collapse, and we put the power back in the hands of the people, the small business, because that's what we've got to do. Watch where your money goes and who you're funding.
Vote with your dollars. That is like the only true democracy left in the West, is voting with your dollars, where you spend it, and make sure that you don't give it to the corporations and the banks that have been oppressing and stealing forever. Put it into the new financial system, the cryptos. Put it into your local farmers markets. Put it into your local independent businesses, and those that say, "Hey, my business, I choose to deal with people, not with some fascist system that's imposing extremely anti-human rights laws and oppression and even state violence, which is absolutely insane." And make sure to stay peaceful, but also to I love seeing what you're doing, Cambell, there with the meetups and all the movements of the protests, because it is a rising tide and it is growing inertia that it's coming to a figurehead, and there's only so much lies that they can keep pressing, because apparently also in BC now, next to Alberta, where I'm at, all of the nurses and doctors are supposedly debating going on strike, because they just can't handle not the overwhelming amounts of COVID, but in fact the ridiculous amounts of people that are getting sick after they take the jab. And even with all of that, they're just so fed up from seeing the lies on TV saying that they're being overwhelmed, and yet the hospitals are emptier than they've ever been. And it's like, I went to a hospital 2 weeks ago in Calgary, and it was like, I've never had faster service there, like never in my life, just because it was so empty. And then it's like, I turn on the TV for 1 minute, and it was like, the Canadian military is sending in doctors for Alberta to help the overwhelmed system. And it's like, overwhelmed because they're going on strike? Like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah,
it's such a shame.
It was just like last year when it was so overwhelmed. It was so overwhelmed that, the nurses just had to dance. They just had to dance to get rid of all that stress.
So there's a lot of things that I like to highlight, but I think the biggest one is that there was a highly sophisticated advanced civilization here. That's where we came from. It's not the story that we're told. And
No.
we're powerful united. And, that's another reason they have worked so hard to keep us separate and divided, is they know that. They know they can't touch us if we know what's going on.
Exactly. The power is in the people.
if we unite. And they may have
it's happening.
bigger
And
weapons and
Perth
horses,
meetup,
but...
guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, they try. It's all intimidation, though, all their big weapons and that, and it's just all to make us scared. But yes, definitely groups, guys. Perth meetup, 16th of October. I've put some flyers around in social media. So come and check us out. And anyone anywhere else, I know Kel's trying to get one sorted in Melbourne, but if anyone's, wherever you are, of course, I can't do it all myself. So I need, but we're still trying to get together like a Discord where we can have chats for each individual city. So literally people can go and say, well, I'm from this city. Let's start one, because that's the other thing, powerful, we need to strengthen numbers, get out there, start living our lives again. Don't take any of this crap. If police come up and tell you you can't do something, ask them why. Ask them to prove their point, because they can't. It's just intimidation, and stand up for your rights. Enough of this bending over crap. Be peaceful but strong.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always great. Always great to be with you guys.
There he is.
He's back.
Yes.
I was trying to find
Thank you
a shirt
again,
with,
Michelle. Must be
thing on
getting late there.
It is. Let's
Some anti-disestablishment.
let's see.
carrying
I love the word. It's almost 11 here, and this is Pacific time, so it is late. It's
Cool.
2:00 in the morning Eastern time. But
Oh, there we go.
hit me up again in a couple of weeks, and I'll get to some like bell towers, because got some neat stuff to share with that.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Cool. Get onto
And
the bells.
I'm trying to get
towers.
Paul on with us as well, because
Very cool.
we've just seemed to keep missing old
Yes.
Paul. But he, Mr. Cook does say he really wants
Yeah.
to come back on, so we will arrange
I have
that.
got his WhatsApp, so I can contact him. I think he said he's not that good on email, but I don't even have WhatsApp, so but we'll get Paul on. Paul, contact us, send us an email.
WhatsApp wasn't even working today, so yeah. Along with Facebook and Instagram.
and Instagram, I know, right? I was going to mention that, like, what hats? Like, there's been so much talk, and like Bernie mentioned the cases going through. There's cases in Australia. I know there's stuff in the US, and then all this talk about something's happening October, right? Red October. We're in October, and then Facebook goes down for how long? 7 hours. That's never happened ever,
right?
Since it has been launched, ever. So what was that about? They're just saying, oh, it's just that wasn't just a glitch. Someone went in there and started doing stuff. So, we don't know what's going on under the surface either. That's the other thing.
Next one. It will all come out, and we will have to
Exactly.
maybe for the next one we'll set it up where we can do the second half on Odysee or something like that. So we don't have
exactly. Yeah, we can get into it a bit more. Yep. Don't have to hold our tongues. Yeah, and then that way we can have a bit more talk back as well. And
yeah. You get to a certain point where it's like it's not possible to not say anything. It's all BS. It's about control. It's not about your health,
isn't it?
And it's getting more and more obvious.
No. So, we'll definitely do that. We've got accounts, so we can jump across to like Odysee, Rumble. I think are the best two, and that way we can just say what we want.
Exactly, and
which is what we need to do, because we speak to the universe, right? Like everything we do, intention, the way we speak, we put our frequency into the universe. That's what they're stopping us doing with all this censorship. Literally, they're stopping us telling the universe what we want. So we definitely need to do that, because it reminds me at this point in history. Just quickly, just one more minute, Michelle. In the Bible, before the flood, right? It says that all the people on earth were yelling and screaming and making so much noise that God had to come down and sort it out. And that's kind of what it feels like at the moment. Hopefully he won't be bringing a flood this time, but we've got to make noise. We've got to speak to the universe, right? And then it will give us what we need, or God, or whatever you want to call it. So there you go.
And Cambell, I'm going to forward you an email that one of my viewers sent me, and it's more down your line than mine. it looks really interesting, but I'm not really into the word connections, and there's a lot of really good suggestions. So
cool.
I'm going to forward that to you to take a look at.
Definitely.
Ooh, I remembered.
Thank you. I've actually got a video I'm supposed to be mean to make called Words Are Cool. And it's literally just a list of words I'm going to read. But anyway, I'll be quiet.
We have to do an episode coming up, maybe 2 from now, where we go over specifically the coastlines of Alaska and of Siberia, the old Tartaria, and compare to some ancient maps in particular, because I believe that is a subject that pretty much gives undeniable, in-your-face evidence of the narrative is bullshit, people.
And Paul will be a good one for that. So
it is.
Absolutely. Good call. Definitely. We will set that up.
Yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, it's
every
clear
narrative has a narrator.
Yeah, and I was just going to say it's clear that coastlines are shaped, and that's all over the world.
Clearly.
So, harbors.
Yeah.
If you study it for any length of time, you get the same shape, appearance all over.
And block work and engineered like structures and exactly. It will be an episode to look forward to, because there's so much out there. It's insane that, well, it's not insane that people still believe the old narrative. It's just they haven't been exposed to the facts, and that's why it is so important with what we are doing here and what this entire community is doing. And I love your site, Michelle. For anybody that doesn't know, it's piercingtheveilofillusion.com, where all of her work is put into laid out blog work and documented, so you can watch it in video and then reference the actual facts that are meticulously listed and categorized and documented by our good friend Michelle.
Like I said, I need a life.
Yeah. Link is below.
I do this all the time, so I'm like, oh.
That's okay though, because
tell me about it.
The perfect time to have this nerd out session, lives, because now the history books taught in school might be like this chapter written by Michelle Gibson. Here's.
Well, I mean, I literally I cannot get it out fast enough, because it's just.
Tell me about it.
It's
too much. I've got to stop.
Time to get it out for people.
I literally
people to
don't look
up.
at some web pages now. It's like you do your research and you see something that looks really interesting. It's like, no, click it off. I just can't go there. Because you never get anything out.
Been there, done that.
Rabbit
it's like,
hole.
oh, this is a great rabbit hole, but I'll never leave it if I go down it.
Right? Like, sorry, Alice, I have to get back to paying my bills in the real world still, sadly.
Yeah.
But I do.
The real world, let's destroy that.
It's all about building everyday world into Wonderland, and not just having to go down a rabbit hole to live in Wonderland, because we can have a heaven on earth, and it's just about changing your perspective and being positive and committed to building and working and being the best version of yourself, and being a community, a family, and one people under one realm of this shared space we call home.
And I'm just gonna
definitely,
this is a whole nother episode, but what you're talking about, using the metaphor of Alice in Wonderland, and we talk about rabbit holes. It's like we're living in this Hollywood movie script with these certain books that were shoved down our throats. So we read Alice in Wonderland, we see Alice in Wonderland from the D word however many times, all these different movies. My understanding is Lord of the Rings is another one of those books, which kind of makes me sad, because I really liked them when I was growing up. I read them several times. But they're all telling us something about this world that we live in. Star Wars, you know, Star Trek, it's all,
yep,
you know, predictive
the
programming.
and yeah, the whole stuff.
And so our perceptual filters are being formed along these lines that the controllers have wanted it to be. You know, they've given us so many distractions so we wouldn't notice what's actually in the environment around us. And
exactly,
you know, it's just, it really is. It's like we live in a scripted reality.
The Truman Show, but it's the Lyman Show. We are the Lyman Show. We live under the Lyman Show.
The untrue man.
So anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Once you start
definitely, yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to have a chat and just without any pictures, and we'll just maybe just have a chat, and we'll just go esoteric for a few hours in a few weeks or something. So
right? Yeah. It's a few weeks.
That'll definitely have to be an Odyssey sort of video.
Episode 3 from now will be us discussing such things as Lord of the Rings and its esoteric topics of how there used to be elves, giants, trolls, and everything else, and shifted to the plane of where they took those sky boats and left Middle Earth into whatever realm they now are in.
Well, there's a bit on that, and the whole Mount Meru. You know, Mount Meru, like the what's it called? But yeah, the Black Rock, and of course, what's one of the biggest companies in the world called that owns everything? It's called Brock. But the Tree of Life, right? And that's supposed to go up to the different levels, and then they talk about in religion, they talk about the Most High, right? The Most High and heaven. I'm wondering, you know, if the center and did they knock it over? Did they blow it up? So now that they've literally disconnected our connection to the upper realms, the Most High, right? I don't know. There's a whole nother narrative there, so I could. We won't be short of ideas.
Somebody just mentioned Jules Verne, and he is another one. 100%.
Jules Verne.
But I mean, they all are. I mean,
he's
you know, Charles Dickens, Victor Hugo, Jules Verne. They're all of the authors. Jack London, John Steinbeck, Leo Tolstoy. There are William Shakespeare, who probably was more than one person. They were all part of the narrative shapers.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's what they were there for. Here's your reality. All righty, 2:33. Oh, 2:34. It was almost 2:33. All right. Anyone got anything else to add? How we going? All good? No? All right. Well, everyone remember there's a Perth meetup, 16th of October. So check it out. There's it's on Telegram, it's on Facebook, other places. Come down, say hello. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Michelle and Bernie. And we'll be back in, Bern and I will be back in a week, hopefully with Paul or someone else, and Michelle in a couple of weeks. And we'll be into, I've forgotten what you said, bell towers and bell towers, ringing and all that kind of stuff.
Most
definitely. You can ring my bell. All right.
Always a pleasure, my friends. Much love and respect, and peace be with you all. We will see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
And we'll talk to you all.